actually.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. The first item is the approval of the agenda and order of business. I have no changes that I'm aware of. Yes,
I have an addition, please, under new business vote and vote in my district.
it's been a while.
It's been a while.
I just want to add a policing matter, if I could. Just take a second.
Yeah. Anything else?
The Municipal Planning Advisory Committee met, but I know that will come to council, so I don't know if I need to bring it up or wait until
Wait,
the
we get it.
report.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Garth has the request for decision prepared. so
Okay,
it'll
let's go.
probably be in your package for next week's meeting.
Okay, let's wait on that.
Okay.
Okay, somebody prepared to move the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. No public input. So we're at minutes of the previous meeting, council May the 26th. Errors or omissions there?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Special council June the 2nd. Any errors or omissions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Committee of the Whole, June the 2nd, and we have one motion. Extend terms of Chester Village Planning Advisory Committee. Oh, no, that's the nominating committee.
That's this one. We have 10 more motions.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, is there any motions anybody want to separate? I guess is the question. Somebody prepared to move, we adopt them?
I will move.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Okay, now we got nominating committee, and there's only one motion, that was to extend terms. Anybody have any issues with that?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Okay. 7.1, hard to believe. Adoption of landfill vehicle replacement policy. You doing that?
I think this one's just.
Yeah, second notice.
Oh, second notice,
Second
okay,
notice,
my mistake, yeah. Somebody prepared to give second notice that is final? Yeah,
So
Second.
discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Yeah,
Good morning, council.
good morning.
What I have for you today is a request for direction covering the replacement and or amending of bylaw 74 for tax exemption of charitable nonprofit organizations, municipal water utilities, and licensed daycare.
Yeah,
Um,
that was the easy part.
Yeah, quite a lot of work from a number of departments is going into preparing this for you. So as you can understand, it has been a while since this was first requested by council, but we're happy with what we've got here for you today. There will be still some more work to do, obviously, as we're only asking for direction today. There's nothing quite ready for full going forward.
Hold up.
So bylaw 74 provides the partial or total exemption of commercial property taxes for various charitable and nonprofit organizations within the municipality. The bylaw is amended each year to reflect changes in ownership and or use of each exempted property. And council has requested us to review the exempted organizations to confirm the continued eligibility and to determine which, if any, organizations receiving exemptions are member-based and of those which, if any, have membership restrictions. My recommendation here today is just that council provide direction on each of the 4 items below that are included in the discussion section. And those items are the creation of a policy to replace the authority provided under the current bylaw 74 to provide tax exemptions to various organizations. The second one is to remove some restrictions on assessment type where allowable under the Municipal Government Act. The third one would be to choose whether to amend or repeal bylaw 74 after the other changes being recommended. And the last one would be to the updates for the list of organizations that are currently included on the bylaw. So MGA section 71 and 71A, which I've included an excerpt of as an attachment if you wish to refer to that. Stipulate the various restrictions and the extent of the exemptions that are allowable and the qualifying factors for each type of organization, by which council may provide exemptions of taxes. And here is a table on page 2 here that just sort of covers the details of what is provided under the MGA currently under that 71 and 71A. Sorry, this is just 71 and 71A. So we have the type of organization, the schedule of the current bylaw that reflects those types of organizations, the applicable section if you wish to refer to, whether this is to be established by policy or bylaw under the current MGA guidance, and then the allowable assessment category for properties. So I included that because the current bylaw specifically says commercial properties as what is allowable, and there's a little more flexibility there. So we'll talk about that, and the extent of the exemption allowed under the MGA. So properties of a named Canadian charitable organization that are used directly and solely for charitable purposes, that's currently reflected under Schedule A. This is to be covered under a policy, can cover any assessment category, and the extent is up to 100% of property taxes can be exempted. The second category is nonprofit, community, charitable, fraternal, educational, recreational, religious, cultural, or sporting organization, if, in the opinion of council, the organization provides a service that might otherwise be a responsibility of council. This is what's currently shown under Schedule B of the bylaw. And the MGA stipulates that this can be covered under a policy, again, covering any assessment category up to 100% of all property taxes. The third category of organization is nonprofit, community, charitable, fraternal, educational, recreational, religious, cultural, or sporting organization without that clarification of would otherwise provide a service that would be the responsibility of council. That is the current Schedule C.
Slow down for a second.
Sorry. Yes.
This is important stuff.
Yeah. Did you have a question or you just want me to speak slower?
Both.
Okay.
When you did 2, it said provide a service that might otherwise be responsibility of council. You said the same words in 3, but I don't see it in there.
No, sorry. In 3, it is the same except for that classification.
Except for that
Yes,
classification.
my apologies. And also
That's
this,
why I needed to slow down.
fair enough. I've been working quite heavily in this, so for me, it's all just reciting things I'm very familiar with. I'm sorry, I will try to go slower here.
I read it once.
The difference here, in addition to that classification of would be otherwise a responsibility of council, is that this section under MGA only applicable to commercial assessed tax properties. So would not be allowable to residential or resource property.
Well, give an example.
That would be, so like, well, no, the golf course would be commercial, I believe. Wouldn't it?
In theory, you could have residential.
What schedule is the golf course?
The the golf course is currently in schedule. Okay. It's in Schedule C currently, so that, yes, that would be.
Where would the lodges be?
The lodges are in Schedule E, I believe. Let me just double check that. No, Schedule C as well. Yeah. Yeah, and we'll get through the details of the organizations.
Yeah, I
In
understand,
particular,
but I
those
just,
ones will be mentioned later. We've done some review on that as well.
See that?
The fourth category of properties is the buildings, pump stations, deep well pumps, main transmission lines, distribution lines, meters, and associated plant and equipment of a municipal water utility. That's currently under Schedule D,
We've never even dealt with that.
and there's nothing in there. Yeah. And then Schedule E of the current bylaw is the category of any daycare license under the Early Learning and Child Care Act. This one would still need to be under a bylaw, not under a policy, and is restricted to just commercial assessed properties. So if it's a residential or resource property, would not qualify for this category. And the extent of that would just be the difference between commercial and residential rates. So you can't give It's not allowable to give 100%.
You just switch it from commercial to residential.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, it would still be commercial, but we would offset the difference.
Yeah.
So effectively, it would be taxed as a residential property. So the 4 items that we're looking for direction on, the first one is the creation of a policy. So that's just to reflect that the MGA currently stipulates that for those first 4 categories, exemptions can be provided under a policy of council. So this would be, sorry, so the exemptions currently provided under schedules A, B, C, and D of bylaw 74 should be replaced with a new policy providing those exemptions.
Okay, that we have to do.
No, you don't have.
Well,
You just have the ability.
Yeah.
You can do anything you want under bylaw. You can still stay with. bylaw.
Right.
The question is, what's the advantage of going to policy versus bylaw?
I think the advantage is that it
would clarify
that
what.
provides some sort of clarification for this council and future councils.
Well, no, well, I think you could have exactly the same wording in both, but I guess off the top of my head, policies are a little easier to
Easier to amend.
amend and modify than bylaws. So, yeah, it makes sense to go with policy.
Yeah, and where this is currently it's a bylaw that we amend annually to revise, making it a little bit easier to revise would be.
I think that's a good advantage.
Okay.
So I guess the direction we're looking for is council, would you prefer us to move those 4 schedules to a policy, or would you prefer to remain as a bylaw and revise the bylaw to reflect that?
Policy sounds like simpler.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, it's easier for us to change if we find it's not working.
And we amend it every year. It was also because the MGA now
Allows for it.
provides that in section 71, that the council may by policy exempt from taxation to the extent. So
Well, I think
that's what we were.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying, I think, there's nothing wrong with keeping it in a bylaw, except that typically when you do a bylaw, you don't intend to amend it every year. But you put a bylaw in place, if you tend.
We change it all the time.
You might intend to change it every now and then, but not every regular, whereas this is a regular thing.
Yeah.
So policy does make a lot more sense. I agree.
So why are we changing it every year? Is it that we're adding organizations to the list, or what's the need to change it every year?
You have to review it.
Yeah, so we review the organizations that are included for whether the ones that are there are still qualified, and as well as an opportunity to add new organizations that may come up that should be there, or in the opinion of council should be provided.
And if it's a bylaw and they aren't, it's more complicated to add them or remove them.
Yes,
Well,
like,
it's bylaw amendment.
yeah, bylaw amendment versus a policy.
Oh, wait.
I guess I like the idea of having a policy, and I feel like we could add a lot more guidance than you'd normally see in a bylaw, policy, because I think even within this framework, there's a bit of inconsistency here, and there's been discussions here at the table about who should or shouldn't receive this benefits, and often there's organizations that we wouldn't provide a grant to, then we'll obviously give them quite a significant amount of tax exemption, which is the same thing. And somehow we don't feel like it is, but we're doing the same thing. And I think that I think we really should tighten up on what the criteria are, and really have an honest discussion. So if we put this to policy, then it'll allow us to have that discussion.
Yeah.
And maybe there'll be organizations that no longer fit very well here, and we may identify others that do.
Yeah. So anybody have a problem with moving to policy?
No, not at all. I just want, so if we go in that direction, so you will repeal the bylaw 74.
That'll be a separate point for discussion a little bit further, because there is one component that still must be a bylaw under MGA if we're going to allow it, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay,
But yeah.
great.
Okay.
Okay.
The second item would be removing the restriction on assessment types. So that's just to reflect that.
Chad, is there anybody out in the waiting room? Because I'm expecting some people to show up. I don't know when.
So the current bylaw, as I mentioned earlier, specifically references commercial properties, whereas the MGA is a little bit more inclusive in what's allowable. And so the first three items that are presented in the table do not require restrictions on assessment category to be exempted. So
Where are you on the?
I'm on page 3 in the second paragraph. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so if council so chooses, the new policy could be created with relaxed restrictions on property type where allowable, to focus on providing exemptions based on the service provided and or the benefit to the community rather than the assessment category of the property. So just basically what we're looking for here is direction on when we go to create this policy. Would you prefer to keep that restriction as to commercial properties only, or would you prefer it to be more inclusive and allow for other property types to also be included?
Just refresh my memory. If the property is assessed as commercial, what we do is reduce it down to the residential assessment.
Some, yes, some are given a full
Full
exemption.
exemption.
The thing is that the bylaw currently is only applicable to properties assessed as commercial. So if a
Yes.
property was assessed as residential or resource, it would not qualify under the current bylaw,
For exemption.
right, at all.
So
I'm just wondering what ones that would ever be. Hmm?
Somebody were holding a park, for like, it wouldn't necessarily be a commercial property, it would be a resource property.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Resource.
Well, then we should at least have that ability.
Yeah, it's not, it would not require that to be given to anyone. It would still be a decision of council for each
Yeah.
organization to be included.
Yeah.
It just reduces that restriction so that you have the option if it comes up.
that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Is this a new provision of the act that allows us to do that?
I couldn't speak to how long it has existed, but it is, the act provides for allowing exemptions to other properties, whereas the bylaw is specifically just commercial properties at the moment. So I'm not sure when that would have changed or if it was originally that way.
But isn't that what we're trying to do based on what service it provides to the community? Isn't that really why what we're looking at?
That's the only reason we're doing
That's
it.
the only reason we're doing it.
Yeah.
That's why we had flagged this. We saw that there were some some residential or resource property that council might wish, but your bylaw said commercial only. We did not understand the history behind why it said commercial only. So that's why we're flagging it.
So we don't have to use it, but it would give us the ability if
Right.
under the right
Right,
circumstances.
it prevents, it avoids the situation where you wouldn't be able to provide an exemption to an organization that you may wish to simply because of the classification of the property.
Yeah.
Where we're trying to focus on the, like Councillor Wells mentioned, it's about the function that they serve to the
Well,
community.
yeah, I mean, if they're no benefit to the community, why would you even do it?
Right,
I'm going to get into the discussion about a particular organization and whether or not we agree that it's
Yeah,
for the benefit of the community.
yeah.
I mean, I guess the one thing about having it black and white, and take out that gray area where we can just sort of get bogged down. Yes, I'm just trying to think this through.
I know.
I don't think we're going to make a decision on this today. Hopefully, it is some discussion.
Oh, yeah, no, that's for sure. It's just a question of which direction.
Yeah, that's a good question too.
So just to touch a bit more about the possibilities around the resource, or what might be parkland or resort, classified as resource. I'm trying to think of some examples. So what about the Gray Grant area or some of those other areas? What would they be categorized or classified?
Yeah,
as now?
well, that's true. Well, the Gray Grant doesn't get an exemption. It's because it's categorized as forest land.
Resource, it's categorized as resource. So that's a perfect example. So that's
But
an
mind you,
example.
their taxes aren't going to maximize, so. Whatever.
Just throwing it.
But I know, yeah, like if they were to, yeah.
So, and I'm just looking on the chart of all of our properties that are on that list, not our properties, I'm sorry, but, so like, and I may be wrong, like the trustees of the Chester Garden Club, they are resource property tax, so that be also an example? So any
Right.
money. that
Yes,
these
because
groups
right
would
now,
save,
yeah,
whether it's a small amount or not, would go back into the work that they do, which is important, no matter how small an amount it might be. I know resources tax low right now.
Yeah,
So that's an example.
that's another example of one that could be exempt.
Yes, so those are real examples that I think are important. If those are two that we can think of
Well,
now.
some resource lands have residential assessments.
Depends on the type.
Yeah.
Resource are not all
Yeah.
the same. You're talking about forestry and agriculture, the preferential rate. right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Those Fives and those sevens.
yeah, so it all depends, but yeah, some of those, that some, they wouldn't be eligible at the moment.
at the moment, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, really just looking to say, when we create the new policy, should we provide the maximum flexibility to council to make that decision based on other factors, not just be limited based on the classification of the category? That's really.
I
all
think
this-
flexibility is
Yeah.
good.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, that's good. The next item is a decision of whether to amend or repeal the existing bylaw. So as we create a new policy that will replace what is currently schedules A, B, C, and D, that leaves Schedule E, that in order to provide the ability to give exemptions to organizations would still need to remain as a bylaw under the FGA.
So we would have to revise it.
Schedule E is for the licensed daycares. The current version of the bylaw has one property listed. That property is no longer a daycare, is now a residential property, so it would not qualify. So if we amend the bylaw, it would be an empty bylaw for now. It would be there for potential use in the future if a registered daycare.
Okay,
However, there's also the fact that recent changes from the federal and provincial government have provided significant funding for registered daycares. And so there may be interest by council to say that, well, since they're being provided this funding, we don't
You don't
necessarily
need-
need that option anymore. So the direction we're looking for here is whether whether you would like to amend the bylaw to remain as essentially a vacant bylaw to provide the opportunity in the future to perhaps provide exemptions, or if you would prefer to just repeal it and say that it's not really our area to.
so we're
to
currently
provide.
not using.
It wouldn't be used even if it did continue to exist right away. It would be at some point in the future, if a registered daycare were to open up and council were to choose to provide an exemption, there would already be a bylaw. And so is there interest in maintaining that option, or do we prefer to just repeal that and replace with the policy?
Sort of 6 of one, half does the other to me, so. Is it, if one came along, we could always create the
But
bylaw.
then we have to go through the whole process to.
We would have to do that.
Bylaws,
Yeah,
with the associated expense of that.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Is there any harm?
so why do we, yeah, why wouldn't we just amend it, and if it ever became necessary, we did.
I mean, if you knew clearly that you weren't going to be interested in providing those exemptions because of the additional funding that's being provided from other levels of government, then I could say that you might want to just close that door before you have to deal with somebody knocking on it.
Yeah,
Or if you prefer to leave the option open, that's totally up to council's decision.
You're recommending that as well.
I think he's thinking we should just get rid of it.
Yeah, my recommendation is for you to provide direction on whether you'd like to amend or repeal. Functionally, it doesn't really matter from my perspective. It's more about council's interests.
Just thought I'd
Tina?
My worry would be, is, and it's nice to tidy things up, I get that, but my worry would be is if the federal and provincial governments can be so generous, swooping in and being generous, that can also change, like it
Yeah.
can go back, it could change the other way, because it changed this way. So then we would be leaving them a bit high and dry if there was ever that daycare that opened in a private home, I guess.
A private home wouldn't qualify.
Okay,
This is
well-
one section that's required to be a commercial property only.
Yeah, so it's not people who do it in their own houses. and things like that.
I suggest we repeal it.
What do people think? Let's
I would.
repeal, next two,
What do you think, Beth? Dalla?
I'm fine either way, it doesn't really matter. I would think you want some, you want some leeway, you want some, I would think.
I don't.
Casino reason to keep it.
No reason to keep it, the way we wouldn't want to be in the daycare business at all.
No, we're not in it now.
No, I
Nobody
think,
uses it.
I think repeal it. If we have to put something in again, we will.
So I'm fine with that because I mean.
Well, yeah, because
we
you
have
know if
existing
somebody's
daycares
going to
that are
start
doing
one.
very well. I mean, the one in New Ross is at our own building.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not concerned about New Ross at all. I'm concerned about the municipality. But I just want to clarify, then, again, this is a learning experience. When I mentioned about the home, and daycare in the home, so Brenda Cook Forest, she had her daycare
You know,
in her house. So that's an example of somebody opening a daycare and slicing off part. So that's, I just wanted to be clear on that I wasn't making that up.
no, when we didn't exempt, then that's a business in your own house.
But we're under Schedule E.
They were the one exemption being
Yeah.
Oh,
provided.
they were.
They are no longer assessed as a commercial property and so wouldn't qualify.
They
anyway.
weren't in their own home.
Oh, they had.
They had a
building
separate
outside.
building.
But it's now, but it could easily be converted to a home because now it is. right?
Well, it is now a personal dwelling,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
It's a big building.
Yeah.
It's not. It is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But it was
The
good.
daycare
So again, it could be a house that I inherited.
That's repealed.
Repeal it, and bring it back if we need to.
Yeah.
Next.
Now, here's where we get into the details of the review that was performed over the list of organizations. So we'll go through them schedule by schedule. The ones that had, and not every organization has been included here, just the ones with notes that, you know, either to notify you of a change or to ask for your input on that item. So for Schedule A, the first one is the Nova Scotia Natural Resource, care of the Chester Municipal Heritage Society. It's the old CNR station. This property is now classified TX 22, which is exempt, i.e. we do not charge them taxes. So the recommendation would be to remove them from this schedule.
Well, we don't have to, then why, no need to repeat.
Yeah, it's mostly just house cleaning. There is no exemption to provide. We do not charge them taxes anyway. The Shoreham Village Senior Citizens Apartment, the blood clinic, is no longer used as a blood clinic and has been transitioned to apartments. And so I would be looking for direction from council as to whether they wish to continue to provide an exemption under the policy or not.
Why would we?
We were exempting,
Because they were a blood clinic?
yes, and because it was commercial, we exempted
No,
it.
they're not.
Yeah, now they're not, so.
So they would fall under the same as an apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
this-
would just assume that it's not exempt anymore.
Well, all the other apartments, aren't they, right? I mean, these are just 4 apartments in that complex.
right, it's been converted into more apartments, right?
That blood clinic has been converted into 4 apartments.
I'm not sure the exact number, but yeah.
I believe so. Okay. But then with the, around that, we have another 50 apartments. Right. So those 4 are now treated differently than the others?
Yes, under the current bylaw, they've been given an exemption.
Yeah.
However, the use has changed, so we're looking at.
I understand that, but I think we need to treat those 4 new apartments like all the other apartments.
Absolutely.
That's what we're gonna do.
That's what we're gonna do, yeah, remove.
Okay. The South Shore Community Services Association, this is the land and school at Bonnie Lee Farm in Windsor Road, and land and residence on Collicut Road for 2 buildings. This is just a simple housekeeping item. The charitable number has changed, just recommending changing that to reflect no change to the exemption being provided.
Make simple, yeah.
Western Shore and Area Improvement Association. This is another one that is now exempt and it's actually one of our, we own the property, so I'm just looking at cleaning that up and removing it.
Yeah.
The Chester Arts Center at 62 Queen Street, this particular account has been consolidated with another one. So again, house cleaning, no change to what's actually being offered, just removing this particular item
Yeah,
from the list.
all in one then.
Okay, on to Schedule B. The Aspetuggin Heritage Trust, there's a land lot that is now assessed as TX01 residential. We're not aware of any change in use, it's just a classification, so we're not recommending a change, and the change of the allowable exemptions would mean that this is still covered.
Okay,
The Hubbard's Area Lions Club is the first one on the list that is a members-based organization. We're not aware of any membership restrictions. Not recommending any changes there unless otherwise directed.
So how would you become aware?
They're
You're not aware of
bylaws.
any. This is pretty, okay. I don't think there are any, but when you find everything else, how do you become aware if there are any restrictions? Do you read their bylaws?
So to do the membership review, we had some assistance from Chad's team. I'm not sure exactly what the process they went through to assess whether they would know, but are you familiar with what happened, Chad?
So it can be different. So a lot of times groups will contact us if there's change, like if there's change in executive and those types of things. It could be a counselor that notifies us. It could be us contacting the organization. But there isn't a formal process in terms of this file up for us to do an in-depth review of every organization every year. But if there are questions, we most certainly would answer those.
Yeah, and this was just a review done internally at the time, so they looked into it, said, no, there's no membership restrictions, so that's what.
And then you said you're not aware of any, which sort of put a little caveat on it.
Sorry, I was being a little bit,
Well, not only that, but currently, even if there are membership restrictions, we give them.
I understood.
Right now, but.
No, I understand, but I mean, that's part of the reason for this whole
I
process.
That's
know.
right.
I realize that,
So I just want to make sure that we're not being sloppy.
yeah.
If that becomes an issue, I think we have to look deeper into every organization's
Yeah.
bylaws.
the District 1 Fire Commissioners, land, fire, hall, and road is now an exempt property, so we'd be looking to remove this as there is no property tax to exempt them from. Helping Hands to Enrich Learning and Lifestyle Programming Society. This is now the Black Harbor Distillery. It's no longer a nonprofit organization. We're recommending removing it from the
I
list.
would say we start tax exempting liquor stores or stuff like that.
Support your local distillery somehow, but maybe not like that.
So are they still exempt, like this year, are they paying no taxes because of that exemption?
I would have to double check that, but I'm gonna go ahead and say no, we would not be providing an exemption to a distillery, just we're cleaning up the bylaw to make sure it's not reflected as showing they would get an exemption.
But is it not
Could be,
somehow in
that's
the
why,
system,
right?
under that number that they're exempt?
I'd have to double check on that, but I can confirm that we will make sure they get their tax bill this year if they haven't already.
Well, I think that applies to others as well.
Yeah.
If they just change,
Yeah,
and we do
ownership changes.
nothing, are they still getting the exemption? And what's the check and balance on that to make sure?
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I know we do get update information on ownership changes and like mailing address for owners and stuff like that. So I'll come back and let you know what that is.
That would be important.
Yeah, yeah,
I think the exemption is just a number plugged into the computer that someone deprograms that, they're going to continue to get the exemption.
Yeah, generally, as we get updates to ownership information, there would be a process to review the tax codes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
check that. It'd be good.
Yep.
yeah.
I'll provide.
We know we don't want them to get it. Yes, Floyd.
Yeah, District 1 Fire Commission, what does that mean? What's it? Is that the building that what, or I'm not sure what that means.
Land, fire, hall, road.
Yeah, it's the land, the fire hall and the road,
It's not the building?
the fire hall, yeah, the building.
Land, fire hall, which is building, and the road.
I thought it was a community center under the fire hall was just rented. So I'm not sure what that means. That's a community center and the fire hall department rents from the community center, so I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a mixed use.
I can
This is
look at
Blanford, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's, it's multi-use.
Well, the fire department doesn't own the building, but it's community.
community
I
center
just wonder
does.
what it means, so I know how.
Well, the community center would be exempt because they're a not-for-profit organization.
So there's something needs to change. So the District 1 Fire Commission, I may be asked a question, what does that mean? And I'll just be able to explain it.
it should almost say the Blanford Community Center.
And forget the fire.
Well,
That's the district one.
this property included there is exempt. I'm looking to remove it from the bylaw or the policy completely because there is no taxation to provide an exemption for
But
anyone.
it should be exempt for the right reason. Oh, that's what.
No, it's not gonna be on here. It is an exempt property now. It's assessed as TX 22 exempt. We don't even, yeah, there is
We don't
no,
have to do.
there is no
it.
property tax to exempt them from. They're already in an exempt category.
I understand that,
Okay,
but
so it's the PVSC
It-
that's
it's-
the
it's-
assessment and the
it's
classification.
exempt because it's a community, they're not because it's the fire department.
That's correct.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. The Hubbard Yacht Club is another member-based organization with no membership restrictions.
Yeah.
So not recommending a change there. The first item on this next page 5, actually, there was an update that wasn't quite captured here.
How did they determine there's no membership restrictions?
Knowledge of the organization reviewed by staff.
Review of the bylaws?
I again, I have to ask, do you know how the,
Yeah, I'm not sure about, because I'm pretty sure they are a member based, it says member based organization at the top.
Yeah.
So they are a member.
right, but without organization, without restrictions?
Without
Right,
restrictions.
there's no further restrictions, so for example, in the discussion around the golf course where there's restrictions on the geographical area that those members must live in. There's not that same level of membership, so they're a member-based organization, but with no further member restrictions on that system.
No further, so what are the existing restrictions?
You have to purchase a membership to be a member.
You have to live in a particular province to do that?
So that's the.
You
comment
just have to
on-
buy a
You
membership.
just have to be a member, you just have to purchase a member, there's no restrictions beyond that requirement to purchase a membership.
It's an open membership is what it's saying.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. You just want to know on what basis they determine that.
Like the Masonic College, you have to be a man.
Yes.
You have to be over 21.
Yeah.
Just use that as an example, right? I have an issue with that. Wait till you-
No, I understand, but I just. I would like to see
Historic, hey, like,
the membership requirements, if we're going to get into that type of discussion. I don't think we should, but if we do.
Right, so where what does it say? No restriction, no membership restrictions, just means that, you know, anyone can become a member, but
If
only
you
members
choose to,
can participate. Yeah.
Any age,
just as long as you pay your membership.
any
fee.
religion,
Yeah, there's nothing, you're not restricted by any category.
favorite color.
They take lawyers.
Yeah, you can take lawyers.
So,
The restriction is you have to be able to afford it.
yes, that would be a restriction.
Yeah, so to say no restriction, I think it's disingenuous. I think there are restrictions in these private organizations. Unless you're writing it up for everybody, no charge.
But yeah, but I mean, I gotta pay membership to go to the league.
I get it. I know, I'm just,
So I guess as part of our analysis, we didn't go that deep into recording the level, like the cost for memberships and that type of thing, because that would be different. You know, a membership at a tennis club is probably not gonna be as much as a membership at the golf course or the yacht club, so we didn't get into that level. We just let you know that there is a membership system.
I understand.
So at the top of page 5, I need to correct, there was an update to this that wasn't captured in the copy that was distributed in the agenda today. So the trustee of Chester Garden Club at Water Street. This is assessed as resource. Under the current bylaw, it says that the property is currently provided a full exemption from area rates, which is unique to this property from any other properties listed in the current bylaw and is an error. What was approved by council in March of 2021 did not include an exemption of area rates.
No, we don't do that for anybody.
No, I know, and but just to reflect that the bylaw currently does say that, even though it is an error, and so I'm saying that
You need to correct.
yes, we're looking to correct that to read the same as all the others where.
Yeah.
So amend the extent of the exemption to read 100% of general property tax rate. Area rates for other municipal services will still be charged.
Yeah, that's what we do for everybody.
Yes. The Wildor Park Property Owners Association, so council approved in 2017, adding this to Schedule B and providing 100% exemption of commercial rate, effective April 1st, 2018, provided it be classified as a commercial property. The property was reclassified in the 2018-19 fiscal year, and the exemption has been provided. However, the bylaw was not properly updated to include that. So the recommendation is to include this property in the new policy, granting 100% exemption of commercial tax, fire protection, and other area rates still to be charged.
That's what needs to be done.
Yes, officially that has already been approved by council. I'm
Yeah.
just bringing it to your attention as an item that was worth looking at. So Schedule C, the Captain Kidd Rod and Gun Club on Highway 3 in East Chester is a member-based organization with no restrictions other than you must be a member. I guess I'm not sure the best way to
Well,
phrase
that's
it.
the same as
Yes.
the yacht clubs. Yeah.
Yeah, and the yacht club is the next item on the list. The same. It's another membership organization that we looked at that had no further restrictions beyond just being a member.
Yeah.
The next two are the lodges, the Clark Lodge number 61 and Norwood Lodge number 135. These are both member-based organizations with restrictions on membership to only men over the age of 21 years. So
I don't agree with that.
Who would?
Right?
I don't know. I guess the problem I have with that is that they're historic. And it's been like that since the beginning of time. Because they have no money of any description. I mean, they're all but unable to keep their doors open.
So why don't they increase their membership, I wonder?
Most people don't even know what they are.
Exactly, I mean,
Just
We're gonna make a decision.
Want to get into that minutia, you have to make a decision.
Newsfeed.
well,
And there probably are other restrictions other than those two that are stated, so.
Well, you gotta have certain beliefs, that's for sure, but then you do join a church too, so
We don't want churches.
we don't,
they're exempt anyway.
they're exempt anyway.
Yeah.
So these presently, we'll take the logic. Do they go from commercial to residential or do they get a full exemption?
presently, they're getting the differential between residential and commercial.
Still paying residential, but not commercial.
So in the recommendations to be determined. So I'm just looking, sorry. It's table one, we get the difference between commercial and residential. So they would be part of schedule.
They're part of Schedule C.
Schedule C.
Yeah, so they would, yeah, so it's restricted to only commercial assessed properties. And only the difference between commercial and residential. So it wouldn't be changing the extent of the exemption. It's a decision as to whether council would like to continue to provide the exemption or not.
I know it's an argument point, but they're already paying residential tax. And I don't even know how they'd be categorized as commercial.
That was my next question.
Yeah,
What
like
basis
what
would
would
it
cause
be?
them to be commercial? They don't sell anything, build anything. They're not a store.
I think, and is their mission, that they try to fundraise and then give to other organizations, is that their mission? I don't understand
One
what.
of their main missions, yeah.
They have
Yeah.
a fundraising
So
event over at Bella's area next weekend.
I mean, I guess maybe they shouldn't even be on our list, but I can't imagine what would cause them to be considered commercial property anyway.
Good question.
Yeah, that would be a classification by PDSC. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I
exactly the
guess
details there.
maybe before I came to any final conclusion, I'd want to know if we took them off the list, would they be classed as commercial property in the first place? Because if they aren't going to be classed as commercial property in the first
They
place,
don't need to be.
it doesn't make any difference. They don't even need to be on the list.
It seems like they are now commercial.
Well, yeah, but I
That's
can't
what
understand
that's what
why.
I call
Yeah.
it. That's the PVSC where they.
Maybe that review and look at if they can be.
What assessment would they fall into? Because it wouldn't be residential.
Well, so yeah, I guess that's the problem, because you don't live in it.
It's not a resource property.
No. So I guess they're in commercial because there's no other option.
I think so, it's like a default.
Yeah. Yeah, it just doesn't really make what you call perfect sense. Like they have no income structure.
They have no income.
No, they're barely surviving.
But they'd have fundraising events, or if they could, if they wanted to, where the public would pay money. So from an assessment point of view, that would be seen as commercial activity,
Yeah.
even though they're a nonprofit organization.
I mean, one of them, almost a year ago, asked me if they were eligible for a grant. I told them they weren't,
They.
because of the nature of their,
Membership.
yeah. But
And actually, there's a fundraiser
Yes, over your way.
for the lodge this Sunday
yeah.
at the amusement, at the association hall.
Ticket auction.
And that's a lot, that's for the lodge in.
Yeah.
New Ross.
They have the one, it's a fundraiser for the municipality. They do focus and spend their monies and in
Yeah.
a good way, and
Yeah,
they had a
absolutely.
prominent place at the funeral that I attended yesterday for a lodge member, and it was very
Yes.
official and very wonderful, and
Would it open up much of a can of worms if we just had membership restricted organizations would only be allowed to go from commercial to residential? Would that open up
That might be a good compromise. I like that.
Well, then
I
if you
think-
look
I
at the
think we should
next
discuss
one,
that.
does that solve the problem with the Chester Golf Course?
Well, to me, I see, I'm not in favor of taking them off the list anyway, but that's
So I'm
only
not
me.
saying take them off, I'm saying give them the same exemption, and we change the policy that membership restricted organizations.
Can only go from commercial to residential.
Yeah.
That's in the legislation now, isn't it? Or is that part of the legislation?
Well, that's what they're getting now. They're charged the residential rate. They're
I
not
know.
charged any
That way
commercial.
we're not,
Because
I
that's
know.
because they're in that category.
Yeah, the legislation for those organizations in particular would suggest that that's the maximum allowable already.
Yeah.
It's not the criteria that restricts them to that extent. It's not the membership restrictions that stipulate what exemption they can be given. It's the class of organization that they are. But if they are a nonprofit organization that does not provide a service that would otherwise be a responsibility of council. Right, that's the difference between section B and C.
Although it's council's discretion to determine if that would not be a service that otherwise would be provided by council. Obvious example is District of Lunenburg owned and operated a golf course. So that council determined that a golf course, just as a council could determine if a yacht club or I suppose a gun club would be a service that you would otherwise provide. So you have to decide if it's a service that you would otherwise be your responsibility. So there is clear legislative guidance, but it leaves that discretion.
It's all general
Still.
recreation. It's all recreation of some sort.
Well, yeah, depending on your interests. So if we had 100 people show up at the door, there was no gun club around and they wanted to have a place to do that. And
Like a swimming pool.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
I would also wanted that, so Chad is working on a presentation that's just about ready to review with you all your other grant programs, as I think it was Andre had mentioned that this is very much like a grant.
it is.
It is, yeah. So how many are you eligible for? Yeah,
So you
all that stuff.
could provide us direction today, and then you could pause passing the first reading of a policy until you have that presentation. We anticipate that will happen the third week in July at a committee of the whole meeting. And in the classification, we'll flag member-based organization as well for you to consider what type of grants they may be eligible for in addition
Well,
to
right now we
the
get
tax
none.
exemption grant. One thing I wanted to flag, I don't think I should, is that when you exempt an organization under a bylaw, Municipal Affairs then removes the assessment from our uniform assessment. Uniform assessment is what's used to calculate what your education costs are.
Yeah, so the more you take
So
out, the better off
there's a
there.
gross and a net involved. So for example, if you exempt, our health center is a considerable exemption. It's about a $35,000 exemption.
Yeah.
So that saves that organization the $35,000. But it removes that assessment from our uniform assessment
So we aren't paying.
and
education.
reduces our education costs by 35 cents per 100. So the net cost to the municipality using this method is about $25,000 rather than the 35. So using this tool to provide the funding, it's the same as a grant, except there's a benefit, a net benefit to us. One of the things that Tim and I spoke about that I'd like to do after you approve, like to see happen after we approve, council approves who's on this list in your policy, is in addition to an annual review, an annual letter that goes to the organization that says council has confirmed the following exemption for you. The value of that exemption is equivalent to X. And also provide the council with a table of the reduction in taxes so that you're aware of the benefit that
all around.
is
yeah.
being provided to the organization and,
And ourselves.
and have that information when you make other grant decisions for organizations that are also on this
Yeah, you're already
list.
getting next. Yeah.
It should be tied together. I agree. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good exercise.
So what are we gonna do with the lodges? I mean, there's an argument each way.
There it is.
My sense is, the way it is. We're just opening up a can of worms, and I don't know what we gain from that. I mean, even in the lodges, which.
The money's nothing, that's not the issue.
It's in reality, they're still paying residential.
Yeah.
And we know they're not a commercial organization, there's just no other slots to put them in. So why are we sort of going through these hoops?
It's a one-off,
For
really.
nothing.
Yeah. I can't imagine why we'd want to change them to commercial property.
Doesn't make any sense.
They're already paying the residential
I
rate,
mean-
fire rate, garbage rate.
Yes, they have restrictions that are out of date in today's world, but it is, you know, you could argue it's a religious organization. I mean, it is.
Yeah, I know. In many ways it is.
It's a tough one. Whether you want to go down that road, I don't know what you have to gain.
I have no interest in changing.
Just comment, just because it is 2022 and it's important.
Thought you might raise that.
And, you know, I guess, just becoming a bit more aware all the time. And, you know, I give thanks to the fact that Adele and I, Councilor Asif and I are honored to sit on the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and it's opening our eyes a bit more every meeting, I think. So coming into the discussion today, you know, I don't have a lot of counter arguments to what was being said. Charity, they do great stuff. They're not commercial, you know, are challenged with fundraising like we all are. But then it comes down for me, the fact that it, to me, again, as one individual at the table, I have to state what I think is right and what I don't think is right. I can't, in good conscience, support membership restricted organizations to this extent in terms of, I guess, gender. I'm not sure if you say gender and age too, if you will. So that's just for matter of record, my comments for the minutes going forward, because as Floyd had mentioned, he maybe asked questions, and I hope that I'm asked questions about this. I really do, in the position of my counsel. I do, and I respect your opinions, and those are my, not opinion, that's my position. Thank you. I'm sure it'll be Facebook live streamed out there somewhere too. So.
Well, I'm not afraid, as I support what Ken is saying. I think it is 2022 and things are changing every day. Be more inclusive, and the membership restriction with no women is probably not correct. So I agree.
I agree as well. I think they can change their bylaws to include women. I mean, we're not asking them to do that, but I just feel the restrictions are pretty limiting for 2022. It's
Get more people, maybe more fun, more way to raise money and more membership. So, but
I don't think they can change it.
No, it's not that easy.
no, I know it's not, but that's my opinion.
I just think you're opening up a can of worms that you don't need to open up for.
Well, they have a choice though. They have a choice.
Yeah, I know, but you can't be a member of the church unless you have that belief. I realize that it's not restricted to your sexuality or anything else, but
Well, we're talking about other organizations and their membership. And I see the next one on the list is Chester Golf Club. There's a restriction on geographical location.
yeah.
So are we gonna make exceptions there, or we need to make a decision, I guess, it's gonna be, is membership gonna have an effect on our decision or not? That's what it comes down to, is we're talking two different things totally, completely one than the other, and I understand that, but If membership restriction is an issue with us, but if it's an issue, if it's not, open it up for everyone. I guess.
Yes, Wanda.
I'm gonna try to make comment on this sensitive topic. So, I think the reason for tax exemption, like, I think, the tenant that we're trying to reach is that we want to provide some sort of support for those organizations that provide a valuable service to our community that falls within our municipal mandate especially. So, there are many examples of that, and I think that it would be hard pressed to argue that the lodges, for example, don't support our community, and they don't. When they support our community, they don't. The support they offer, I don't think they restrict that
To
by
membership, to
age or gender or even geographic area. I think that the support they offer the community is widespread. So the membership of the folks that are working within their group, they've placed some restrictions, but the outreach that they provide has none. There's a group that doesn't have any in real estate that operates in the social work called 100 Blue Nosers that care, and I think it originally started as 100 men that care or something like that, and it's largely guys that get together and they choose an organization and they give money, and then that money is given to some charitable cause. Me, that's a good organization. It's doing good things, and originally they had some restrictions on who joined. I'm not sure. I haven't really been following them too closely lately, but again, I think it's a plus. But so, like, I think we have to be a little cognizant of both the value of the service that these organizations provides. You know, if they were gone, if they were eliminated in some way, if our support, if we took that away, and would it be a detriment to our municipality at large or benefit? You know, I getting into the minutia of how organizations are run, that's hard. And I realize that conversation is what brought us to this point when it came to the golf club and this geographic area. But I think, you know, we wouldn't want to do something to switch gears slightly to damage the ability for the golf club to offer that service, because I think nobody would argue that our municipality is better for having that.
Yeah.
And we're known for it, and it provides something beneficial. And I feel like the lodges also do so. The way that they're set up and structured, and there's a deep rooted tradition. I'm not a lodge member,
No.
and so, but I understand what they do, and I understand the benefit. So I guess I feel the same as, I guess, Councillor Wells, that, you know, I don't know if I really want to provide some support to a group that is doing a good thing. I don't think they're, you know, maybe I'm off base.
I mean, I don't know about a Chamber of Commerce, but I don't know what their membership, if it's restricted, but you would assume, for the most part, that you have to be a business owner.
Correct.
You know, well, I mean, who else would join? So I don't know if they actually have that in the membership bylaws or not, but I mean, that would be a restriction too.
I agree, and that to expand on that, if they owned some real estate, would we consider giving them some sort of exemption? And I think that I would like to think that we probably would consider that, because
Well, the chamber would be eligible for grant for particular types of events.
I agree with Councillor Vino to the extent that there's no restriction on the outreach. I mean, so we charge them commercial taxes. That means the scholarships they give to our kids graduating aren't going to happen because the money's not going to be there. The end result is it's not going to be benefit to our municipality.
No, I don't see it either.
None of us like in this day and age, that restriction. You're not going to change the historical restriction of the lodges until they die a natural death, which will happen likely. But in the meantime, you know, they're being taxed now.
And they'll continue to be taxed. It's just residential. I don't see.
Everybody knows it's not a commercial organization, but there's no other slot to put them in. So I don't know why we're opening up this can of worms.
No, and they're already not eligible for grants from the municipality because they are membership.
I think the question here is more, are we going to restrict organizations based on membership or not? That's the question. Then. If the policy or a bylaw is yes, it has nothing to do with the rest of the subject.
Well, I guess I might as well get right down to it.
Yeah.
I know that next on the thing is the Chester Golf Club. And I am not in favor of taking them off of the list just because their membership is restricted based on geography, because there's reasons why they can't expand. They don't have the capacity.
But by the same token,
And they provide enormous service.
absolutely they do, but we had them in for presentation and we asked simply to open up to the municipality and put a waiting list on that you would know if you put your name on the waiting list, that it could be 10 years or 50 years, but they didn't even come that
That's
far.
right.
So that's the problem with that.
Yeah, that's the problem I have. That's the problem.
And that's the
People
problem I
tell me.
have, and I have people in my area have the same
Yeah,
problem.
that's right.
You know, they're paying their, you know, to know, and it's restricted. So I agree with Floyd. You can't, I mean, as much as you want to, and I understand about the laws, but you can't cut it both ways, in my view. It's a membership that restricts 21 years of age and over for the lodge. The golf course restricts you that if you're not in a geographical area, you don't even have a chance to put your name in there. That's my argument.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that. I agree with that as well. And I have heard on that, and I imagine I'll hear on the lodges at some point too now. But I have heard about the Chester Golf Club being on our exemption chart listing since they came in and did the presentation and made it clear that they would not, again, just as Adela so eloquently indicated, doesn't matter, it makes it fair to all of us if we want to be on that membership list, waiting list, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, or 50 years. But no, there's no opening that door, that consideration. And yeah, so I'm firm on that one as well.
Yeah. More complex than that, of course.
Sure it is.
I mean, the original deed of gift,
Was for the village.
yeah, and it has been expanded as they were able to expand over the years and likely will continue to expand.
It's-
Part of the deed of gift
Yeah.
was to keep the fees low so the general working man could work. Could play golf.
In the community in which they gave it.
And that's the key, Derek. The original gift was not just for the village.
It was.
Well, I beg to differ
No,
because
there
you
were-
could be a member from anywhere,
That's
from
right. 'Cause
from
there are
anywhere in the
members
municipality
There are
years
members
ago.
from New Ross.
Absolutely.
There were some restrictions right from the beginning. Right from the
Yeah, but it
beginning.
wasn't geographical restriction.
There were some restrictions right from the beginning.
Well, I'd have to see that. I looked at the original constitution, but anyway,
Well,
they've changed the constitution
it's been changed, I agree.
many times.
And,
Yes.
and it's been opened up. But also the fees have been kept low so that people can afford to play.
Yeah.
And bottom line, if you open it up to that level for everybody, the fees are going to skyrocket because they're subsidized by the outside greens fees. And there's only so many slots you can play golf. So, you know.
But Derek,
Can we finish? We can go back to what we're trying to do here. I mean, you're trying to make a point that it's discrimination in this day and age, can't do it. But you can't take it out of the historical context and the services that are offered to the community that we could lose if, in fact, you know, we take away that money. I mean, that goes back into the community. It's not like they're building up a huge bank account. This money is coming back and we have the best junior program, unrestricted. Anyway,
Yeah.
and we want to keep that youth program. We want to be able to support that youth program. So maybe what we do is we take this away from them and give them a grant to support their youth program. I mean, you just can't ignore the good work these organizations
Absolutely
do,
not, Derek, but
just to make a point because of some perceived slight or something.
no, so you're telling me that if they don't get this exempted, it's gonna devastate, they're just let me finish. They're gonna devastate the golf course. They're not gonna be able to carry on. They're such a poor organization. They've got a restaurant down there that if I owned a restaurant in the village, I'd be livid. But anyway, my view is I don't think they should get the exemption. I'll leave that. That's my opinion.
I understand it.
Yeah.
I just don't agree with it, but I
Yeah,
understand,
yeah, that's fair.
your point of view. I think it's too exciting.
You have no idea,
It just is that,
trust me.
when they added the 18
It's
holes,
surprising.
they opened the membership up to anyone who had the money to join. It didn't matter if you lived in Tantallon, Bridgewater, Lockport. If you had the money when they built the 18-hole course, I think it was 5,000 or 10,000, you got a membership. So it was opened up, so the ability to open it up is there. It's just, in my opinion, only maybe the will isn't there. And I know they have all kind of members. I think they're 800 or 900 membership, which is super, I think. And they do add a lot to the municipality of Chester and the whole community. I don't completely understand the restrictions. They're there. I know that they're historic, but it was opened up completely. I don't know how many years ago they built the 18-hole course, but I know a number of people from the downtown Halifax and there who joined that course if they had $10,000 to join.
Yeah, and then I think they put the restrictions back in place because they had more members than they could accommodate. And that was-
Now the membership is $775,
Yeah, it was over that when I left it, so it's gone down.
down from $850.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to go back to a previous counselor, I think that's the individual that first brought this to our attention was Counselor Hector around the restaurant piece, just to piggyback on Adela's comments around unfair playing field, if you will, of one restaurant to another restaurant. And Marshall did bring that up on a couple of occasions, and I give it to him for that, for making me more aware of that as well. So because that is important as well. So
I know it is, but people forget. The yacht club has a bar. The theater has a bar. You know, the rink has a, you buy hot dogs and stuff. You don't have to go down the street to get them, right? No.
If I can, I'm not sure what I'm saying is correct. Yeah, I think Marshall Hector, when he brought this up at the time, ex-Councilor Hector was, part of the issue was based on the restaurant. I'm not sure if I'm even saying this right, you like probably know more than I do, but I think that their restaurant is supposed to be, you have a membership, what do you call it? Not a club membership, it's I think it's 15 or 25, a social member.
I don't know.
To eat there, or you're supposed to go with a golf player as a guest. I don't know if that's still the rules there.
No, I've eaten there
Well,
numerous
I
times.
don't know, but
I've
what
gone
I'm saying is, Councilor Hector brought it up, that were the local rules of the golf club, and that's why the community was upset, because you're supposed to be you're not supposed to be able to just drive in there and eat at the restaurant unless you're a social member or what they're called.
No,
So that's what he brought up at the time.
I'm wondering if the restaurant can be exempt, can be charged commercial and the other buildings or things be left on the list.
One PID.
Pardon?
It's one PID. I think it's one PID.
Yeah.
One
it's all-
PID,
yeah.
so we can't do that.
But assessment can break things up.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, they do it all the time. You have all kinds of multiple assessed properties. So much, so percent, this is such a percent residential, percent commercial. And then we just exempt whatever category we chose.
You know, and I don't know how many dollars we're talking here.
But the money all goes back to a nonprofit organization, the same as if you do a Friday night supper at the Legion itself, or competing with local business. Yes, in support of a community organization. I don't get it. almost all of our organizations put their hand out there into selling products.
But I think the distinction is those organizations, other than the lodge, have no restriction, you know. You can join the gun club with no restrictions, I guess, unless you have a criminal record, maybe,
Yeah.
but,
Well, yeah, that probably does.
but I mean,
That's a restriction. Isn't there an age restriction?
what is it, age?
Yeah, would there not be an age restriction?
Well, it could be, but what I'm saying is the golf club has a particular geographical a bylaw in there, or whatever they want to call it, that limits you, that you cannot even apply to joke. And that's what I have issue with.
It's down to, let's, are we gonna use membership restriction as an issue or are we gonna remove it? It's one or
Well,
the
that's
other.
right, because that's where we
That's where
are.
we're at.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we're talking about.
Really is.
I remember, I just think if we move the membership restriction, we just remember we have to live with it. And that's,
Sure.
you know, because someone could come up here tomorrow with another organization that says only A, B, C that we're not very happy with. If that's the way it is, that's the way it is.
That it's slightly more complex than that, because I think you have to consider, is the benefit restricted? So sometimes, like, for example, if the lodge members didn't hold real estate, if they just met in somebody's living room, you know, I think that we would find them to be quite a great organization. I'm sure there are a bunch of guys, but all they do is fundraise and then give it to others. It's a pretty good setup. The golf club, you know, I understand that they don't want to overwhelm the golf club with members, which could become problematic, but I think the request was to open up the application area so that as openings come up, then if it was somebody from Chester, they could apply, and if it was, they were from New Ross, they also could apply.
That's different.
Yeah, and I think they should do that,
And I wish they would. To me, that would be,
because it would get rid of this discussion.
So that's their decision as a club, as it is our decision as a council
so, yeah, so,
to decide.
and so back to my comment, like, the benefit then is in the case of the golf club is restricted. It's not municipal wide. If you look at the lodge, the benefit of that organization, it's without boundary.
No, there's no boundaries. But the
So
golf
that's why I
club
think it's-
provides us, wow, they do more fundraising and golf tournaments for everybody. You don't have to be from anywhere. So you can-
It's tough.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
To deal with someone.
if you're talking about community organizations that provide a benefit to the municipality of Chester, the golf club does.
But I think you also have to look at their financial situation as well. I mean, they're not,
We don't
if we
give them a
don't
grant.
do the exemption, they're gonna be devastated and we'll have to step in.
Well, it'll probably turn into commercial. We'll go to commercial, which,
Yeah, I mean, they are commercial properties, so it would just go back to being charged the full commercial rate rather than the residential rate.
residentially, yes. It's not like they're not paying now.
Would the golf course part be resource or some
Yeah.
other?
Is it resource?
Don't think so.
I believe it is, yeah.
The
The land.
itself,
The
So it's
land
building,
is
yeah,
resource.
doesn't mean
It's the bill, it's what's listed in here is that,
it's commercial,
right?
but the other would be the residential rate.
That's my
No
understanding.
resources. Yeah.
Resource and residential is the same rate.
Same thing,
Oh,
rate wise.
okay.
I don't know. I think that's what I was here. I don't think
It's
so.
my understanding the tax relief is worth $8,000.
Yeah.
So I just put it in the hard number.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
I think I'm
ask.
close to that.
Are you close there?
Yeah, I think, I haven't looked at this year's number, it would have probably gone up slightly, but,
All right, what are we doing?
We give them $8,000.
I don't have a clue because there's no consensus that I can find around the room. Which is usually what I'm trying to accomplish.
So one options was a request for direction, wasn't a motion on a decision.
No, I know.
So one option is
home to think about it.
lots of good debate and discussion to think about it, we've got clear direction on a number of other changes. We would bring it back, and then when it's time to make a motion to approve the list, council member could bring forward their position at that time, and it could be voted on. The position may be to remain eligible, or the motion could be that they're no longer eligible unless the clubs that you would want removed, and then there would be a council vote.
Yeah,
So
that's where it's gonna end.
And you may wish to wait until after the committee of the whole meeting in July, because we'll be reviewing all your other grant programs. And you would have the benefit of that discussion and debate with your colleagues, and then make a decision. So that would be one option.
And an option we could, right, I mean, they're very aware of our position, they were in, and I guess some.
Yeah, we
councils are
could bring it to their attention again and ask them, tell them that there's a
Yeah.
risk that they will be, that they could lose their status if they do not open the membership.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that we're automatically gonna be able to join, it depends on if they can take more members, but
It's just that you're eligible to join.
I still feel that to represent my constituents, and I've heard it many times, they just would like the opportunity.
So why don't we just delay the decision? Why don't we? We're perfectly capable of it.
Yeah.
Write them again and tell them we're in this discussion and that there's a risk that they will lose their exemption unless they consider opening up their membership to the whole municipality.
Because the exemption is based on the municipal taxpayer, and that's who we're representing, spending taxpayer dollars, as Andre often reminds us in terms of the public purse and the monies that we're in care of. And so it makes it fair for one resident, one applicant from one end of this municipality to get, it's very simple. So I
just want to ask Tim a question. So when these exemptions are given, so is there any leeway in, or sort of, if it's a total exemption, or is it a 50% exemption, 20%? Is there anything? I think Derek, you know what I mean? Is it a straight 100% exemption? Is it based on what we decide? Is there a policy of how you?
It switches from commercial to residential.
Okay,
That's
okay.
it.
Or not.
Or not.
Yeah, just.
No, no middle ground. Okay, is that what we're gonna do?
Yes.
Delay a decision or write them a letter, tell them that this is an issue that we're discussing at the moment and there's a risk that they will lose their exemption if their membership.
So just to clarify, the MGA allows for exempting in whole or in part, so you could choose
Oh,
a
we
number
could choose
less than the
that.
allowable
Yeah,
exemption.
we give them 50% because of their restricted membership instead of 100%.
Well, there's another option.
Well,
too.
that's.
Well, that's all the stuff that we'll debate.
That's, yes.
And that's what you have done
Yeah.
currently, is you've exempt them essentially,
But it's still want to write the letter.
because you've exempted them from commercial to residential, so instead of $1.50, they're paying the 70 cents. So it's about a 50% exemption currently.
But we could exempt from half of the commercial if we chose to.
You could choose to do an exemption less than that under the bylaw.
Yeah.
That's not currently in
Okay.
practice. but-
Well, that's
Another revenue.
That's another revenue. Okay, so we're on to page 6, I believe.
Yeah, so now that we're done with the easy things, we're gonna get into one of the more challenging conversations. Schedule D, there are no notes.
Yeah.
And Schedule E, we've sort of discussed this already. It's the one that relates to the daycares, which no longer apply to any properties. And so the recommendation here was to remove, although we've already discussed the bylaw being repealed for now anyway, so not real contentious on that one.
Yeah. No.
So just to summarize what we've gone through here, we will be creating a new policy to replace schedules A, B, C, and D of bylaw 74. We will be removing the restriction to just commercial properties, so now it will be allowable to more properties, where up to the extent allowable under the MGA, so certain resource and residential properties will still be allowable. We're going to repeal bylaw 74, which wouldn't have had any impact on anything, even if we kept it. And most of the changes as recommended on the next section for the schedules will be provided. And then we will come back for further discussion and debate and decisions around the restricted membership organizations that are included. I will also be providing I'll send out a note to each counselor covering that question around the District 1 Fire Commissioner's Fire Hall building, community hall.
Yeah.
As well as just a little more detail on the process that we go through to review the membership restrictions. So that's what I've got coming out of this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Can I just say something for thought on the restrictions? If we're all gonna be talking about this, why don't we just look at the restricted membership? Instead of getting the 100% reduction from commercial to residential, we just put a percent on it that those restricted organizations will only get.
Don't get as much.
Get us,
Well, that's a possibility. I think
that
that's,
would be just something that maybe we could all agree on.
yeah. It's always nice to.
It's something to think about. For our next discussion.
Maybe it wouldn't be, I think before we cut anybody off, if we were to do that, we should give them the opportunity
To change the membership.
Yes.
and to talk to us,
Yeah.
convince us otherwise.
Okay, thank you. We're taking a 10-minute break.
Okay.
We're not getting anywhere.